What is up, guys? Hope you're doing good. Let's get my notes out here and let's kind of review the day. Once it's all said and done here. First, let's start with narrative read. Let's go find that screenshot from this morning. Okay, let's try it again. First, we were too cautious, right? That signifies something's wrong with it, but we need to look for it. It's not comfortable, it's not great, but we need to do that. Go with strength. Go with the continued, overnights really running higher. Let's see if we keep running. We could capitulate higher. We were looking for that monthly +2, right? That'd be a great place to capitulate into. We'll look for that. Big picture pullback to the downside, short scalp. Scalp signifies it's not the main play, but it's worth taking in this case because it's a hypo. Extension on a couple time frames, need to get a pullback so that we can find those fresh buyers to continue in a healthy manner forward with some of the big picture narratives, which takes us to 3, which is the main narrative, long, a weekly imbalanced pullback. We simply could not have done a better job with narrative today. Just absolutely showcasing many years of experience and deep understanding of the NADRO and narrative reading process. We didn't get good strength to go with early. But you saw us going for that while it was decently appropriate. We did have strong buyers. We were holding over 10K. Makes sense. We can go with that first hypo. We got the pullback in terms of like hypo 2 essentially, and we traded it. I can get onto myself about the core position exit. I can say I went against my own advice that I left you guys with before we hopped off of the morning call. And then finally, I can say that I obviously missed a long opportunity, which was the main number 3, the main narrative weekly IPB. So we were signing off the Q&A. I was saying, look, guys, now we are into what we would call the area, close enough to where, like, I didn't like somebody's trade they took over here. And then later on in the call, I was saying now we're low enough to where it is good to go. It's questionable whether this market was imbalanced down or not. I believe that I said that I was just going to call it not. So this was a trade to take. I did have some personal things. I had various people here in the house, renovations going on, wife needed me, had to run an errand, even all kinds of stuff. I was doing the Q&A call rather than focusing on that as it came into the setup. So I'm going to give myself a pass in terms of like not really be hard on myself for missing that trade. But with the benefit of hindsight here and looking back at what opportunities were available, I picked up a few peanuts today compared to what I could have or should have been able to take had I been better at my job today. Right? Being short from here, I really should have captured, I think, at least that near probe, that stall into 10K into development value low, right? And I only essentially captured, well, I guess essentially 80% of it almost captured that. but then the remainder core position exit there. That's the decision I'm questioning. I had my logic, I had my reasons, so we can talk about it more thoroughly here. But that's number one in terms of, should have caught a big chunk of that. And I feel like I didn't. I suppose technically I caught what? Let's say, well, if I said I was exiting here, then I caught most of that. Anyways, I just felt like there was more room before we actually kind of tagged the area of interest. That's what bugs me. Whenever I'm, exiting a core position here, I know this scale was great. But whenever I'm exiting a core position here and there's that much more, it's something I need to at least address and question. So then that, and then again, some of you took this long here. That's fantastic. Order flow in terms of seller dominated order flow, it really dried up in this area, right? We make a decent new low and Delta's not really doing that. It's slightly lower, but ever so slightly. We certainly dried up into this phase here. Not really much selling at all going on for that last bit. So that gives us confidence to take that momentum shift there. Now, it would have been scary. It's kind of a moot point, but just pointing it out that once we started to lift price-wise, Delta still remained in this tight, weird little flat range. And then once we got this micro extreme fade, then they came in. Neither here nor there, but just pointing it out in case that was something you dealt with today. So, looking back on the day, I would have loved to have seen me hold the core position at least into here. So I take a bigger chunk with the core there. I would have loved to have seen me get on board with this long and take either this chunk or this area here into RTH, right? Similar to yesterday's long play. If anything, I probably would have gotten out here on this not delta neutral, excuse me, 10K retest into there when it started the sellers really piled in. Again, you're running out of time here to the close. What do you really hope to gain by hanging on there? So anyways, I feel like I could have captured more P&L than today's range, right? I could have captured the bulk of this move and then the bulk of this move, and that's within a day's range that is here and here. So I could have essentially captured twice the day's range, at least from a core position perspective, right? Obviously, we're scaling out quicker than that and stuff. But I didn't come close to doing that today. So I do feel like I underperformed a bit given what was available. So I failed to capitalize on my hypo 3. That's on me for not being present, ready, able to trade. That's going to happen sometimes. So again, I'm not going to beat myself up too much over that. But what I think I am going to beat myself up a little bit over is the core position exit. I told you my logic earlier. A period is here. B period gives this excess. C period starts to just hold back inside that there, right? So you end up with this really blocky lack of great excess at the high. I know we had a little wick, but lack of great excess at the high, and then this excess tail at the low for the profile. And so once it's like, man, this absolutely sucks during A period. Okay, we're letting loose. And then I thought we were going back to, hey, this absolutely sucks. Now, maybe it did. I have to assess for me, was it correct or incorrect? And this is difficult for me at times, given the level of discretion I allow myself to trade with. So I have to live and die by that discretion. It's a double-edged sword. I want to reiterate for the umpteenth time for you guys, you should be operating being process-based. I operated being very rigidly process-based for years leading up to the way that I trade now. Many years. And it was the best thing I could have done. So first do the simple well, get really good at the basics, the fundamentals, the skills until you have a lot of stuff that's on autopilot and you're really good at it. Then slowly give yourself the ability to scratch out of trades, give yourself the ability to make some discretionary calls based on order flow or different things. And then you move more towards that intuitive state and whatnot. It's the same in athletics. It's all kind of stuff, right? But at the beginning, you need to be thinking, okay, rack it back, left arm out to stabilize, make sure you get a full turn, right? Like technique type stuff. You need to build those skills. You need to be process driven about your approach and how you're doing it. So for me, you're seeing the fullest extent of my trading and discretionary stuff. I was concerned with the way the day was shaping up, the way the order flow was drying up. I thought that the highs were vulnerable. And so I made a choice to focus on some of those shorter term things, developing days profile, the lack of continuation. And I allowed those things to drive my decision to make an exit. Had I followed my own advice when we signed up on the call, what did I say? I said, you need to go from focusing on some shorter term things, stuff like order flow, whatever, to then, hey, it's boring time. Let's forget we have the trade on. Let's not monitor some of that shorter stuff. It's debatable whether or not the developing days profile is considered shorter term stuff. I can think harder about that. But had I followed that advice, you keep the stops. I love the decision to get back in, to put risk back on that was partially taken off here. I do like that decision. The sellers were stronger than the buyers at that point. And I don't know, I think ultimately I got a little too demanding for that market to drop back out of that yellow box stagnant range for order flow to show me something special. I think I just demanded a little too much of the market there. And I think I should have set back and continued to be content that I was locked in from a really good price from hypo 2 that made a ton of sense, that there, like I was saying, there was a ton more downside available. And I think I should have given it a chance to do that. Now, even as I wrote it in wherever that screenshot went, it's disappeared again or whatever it's doing on my computer. I wrote it as a scalp. Number 2 was a short scalp. When something is a scalp for me, I do allow more stringent trade management. If I don't have the momentum I need, the order flow I need, whatever, those trades are typically just, I take profits. If it's a main narrative play, I tend to move more towards that spectrum around, the seesaw, if you will, right? Because a scalp doesn't have a great narrative. A great narrative has a great narrative. So if we have a great narrative, we have less advanced trade management, less listening to order flow, less all of those aggressive tactics, because it's worth hanging in the risk. So it's a really, really, really gray area, tough call for me in terms of deciding here in the review whether it was a bad mistake, whether it was fully acceptable. It's probably closer to fully acceptable than a bad mistake. but it just doesn't sit perfectly well with me. Do I have a key takeaway, a lesson learned, anything like that? No, I don't want to be fully hindsight biased that the correct decision was to hold more of the core position just because it went lower. Listen to this, guys. If we're going to truly analyze this decision to exit, you should pretend that it did this from there. How do you feel about that exit now? You were short. You got out right there. Is that you're so smart that order flow stalled? We're back in this range that we'd established, and it zoomed out of there. Super smart exit, right? Is it even a question? You see what I'm getting at? If you don't assess things as if it was the hard right edge and you have no clue what happened after the fact, okay, that's how you have to analyze it. Right there at the hard right edge, are you comfortable making that decision? And I think on the spectrum of not comfortable, right, it's a mistake, to comfortable, I think I'm probably there. Maybe there. I think given the position we were in, and I know it's against these narratives, it made sense to be short here. It made sense to be short here. I think it was enough to hold something, even if we return to intraday balance. Give it a little bit more room. I think so. That was what I left you guys with on that call. So that's where my head was at the time. So I kind of got a little impulsive, I think, to bail on the core position. So again, gray area, but it's always worth assessing. And a key lesson for you guys is when you review your work, do not be biased with what happened, with whether or not the decision you made was a good one or a bad one. It's okay to look at things with the benefit of hindsight and say, you know, how did we perform today, right? Based on what opportunity was ultimately available. How good did we read the narrative? You have to have hindsight to kind of look back and see some of those things. But when it comes to a decision to exit or different things like that, given a level of discretion, you got to be really, really brutally fair with yourself in that way. Someone's absorbing some S&P here into, wait, is the market not closed right now? Guess not. Oh yeah, they changed that rule. They no longer do that 15-minute thing, do they? Anyways, I'm never trading at this time, so I don't, make fun of me if you want, but I don't know when it's open or closed right now. There used to be a 15-minute halt. I'm pretty sure last year or something, they got rid of that. So anyways, what else? Okay, final thing for you. When you assess, okay, when some of my AGM students are in this room right now, when you're short from here and you know what type of trade that was for you, and you know what your trade management process is, and you're working on being process driven, this exit is a very simple review for you. What does your process call for you to do? Are you allowed to exit rotational trades in the middle third, right, of DVA? Is there any condition in which you're allowed to exit that trade? For most of you, the answer is going to be no. I pulled more of a discretionary audible, as we've discussed ad nauseum. But for you guys, it's a quicker, for those of you trading based on process, which probably everyone on this call should be, it's a very easy review. Does your process call for that exit or not? If it doesn't call for it and you exited, that's a major error, right? on the spectrum, it's here. It's a major error. You should not be deviating from process as you're developing, as you're building those skills, as you're flexing that being process-driven, disciplined muscle. So that's really it. Again, we nailed narrative yet again. Today was better in terms of opportunity set. It's still a small range, right? We're still in this little cluster. It's like, hey, look at all this trading. And it's like, oh, let's do the intensive. We got no range. But look, I mean, obviously the elephant in the room here today is that we were holy absorption Batman. You guys seeing this? You want to know what absorption looks like? it looks like this, where you have 10,000 contract. No, excuse me, 20,000 contracts sold off, and a passive buyer is just like, gimme. You want a nice little screenshot of what is absorption? Well, there you go, guys. There it is. Again, I think I can get away with, like, for example, like the tweet I made earlier today about recouping those losses and stuff like that. Because I posted, I can tweet about the gains because I post about the losses, right? It's not just like I'm cherry picking, look at this good trade. And so I can say to you now, and this isn't atypical for me. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a big deal, but I just want to hit home the point of, if you can control your risk, if you can learn to not, as an intermediate to advanced level of trading, you can learn how to scratch intelligently, which, by the way, requires the art of the reentry. If you can do that kind of thing and stop from just taking, oh, I'm down 1R, 2R, 3R in just a quick sequence, that is a huge boost to your bottom line. Instead of your equity curve going so low before you try to make some back, it's not as low. It's not getting hurt as bad. And then you make the same winner that you would have had in any scenario. And it's boom, you're incrementally that much better in terms of risk-adjusted returns. So it's not about win percent. It's really not. I understand that it has to be an acceptable level to make it work. But this game is about asymmetric risk reward, skewed risk reward in your favor. That's what narrative does. That's what NADRO does. It allows us to see how that's skewed, right, within a probabilistic sense, which brings into play win percent to some degree. And then we hurt our win percent really, really bad because we try to really, really almost overly precisely time our trades, right? I may have had better P&L this week, not every week. This week, I may have had better P&L if I just bought or sold options to express my directional bias view each day, wouldn't I have? I would have. But nonetheless, it's really, really important that you focus on just grinding out, continue to keep, Hunger Games, keep the odds in your favor. Keep risk reward skewed in your favor and just keep trying to trade well. Just keep trying to stay objective, find your trades. And, I still feel like I underperformed today, right? And we, put up a decent trade that was really well timed with a tight stop. We were able to kind of size it up, and kind of hammer it really, and without taking an ounce of excessive risk. So anyways, it's just a great example. I love these weeks. I don't love being on camera all day. I do love teaching, if that's not obvious. And I do love showing you guys the struggles, the good, the bad, the ugly, just, you know, day in the life, day after day, and just getting it done. So anyways, thanks for being here. Hard to believe. Tomorrow's it. Tomorrow's our last day. These things fly by. Thanks again. Pretty good review here today. Pretty good decision making overall, right? Not perfect. We'll go get them tomorrow. See you.